Hi, everybody. This is Mr. Bishop, and I would like to welcome you all to our very first Madison Biology Screencast. So, you all should have noticed over the past few weeks that Coach Jackson and myself are slowly trying to incorporate more technology into our biology class during periods 2 and 3. And here is our first example, which is Schoology. So, this is our biology periods 2 and 3 class for Schoology. We took our Chapter 2 test on Schoology, and I think everybody really liked that. And we are starting to provide more course materials. Our Chapter 3 vocab is on Schoology, as well as our Chapter 3 lecture slides and our Chapter 2 lecture slides. So we're really going to be using a lot more technology. With that, however, some of you did indeed voice some concern today in class, and this is our stimulus, is that many of you voiced that concern about not receiving complete lecture notes. Or us, myself, or Coach Jackson giving you a lecture. So I spoke to Coach Jackson after class, and I thought maybe this would be a good idea, and I am definitely open to everybody's feedback if we enjoy these or not. But for right now, our response to your wanting lecture notes is Screencast. So what is a Screencast? So many of you may already be familiar with Screencasts. I do know that other teachers at Madison are using them in their classes, but if you aren't, just a brief little intro. So a Screencast is a video of our lecture notes for biology with supporting audio. So my goal is to provide you with a 10 to 15 minute video of each lecture portion, and they will be in lieu of in-class lectures, which will allow for Coach Jackson and myself to have more group activities and group work for you guys in class, and will really become a student-centered learning environment in our bio class and allow Coach Jackson and myself to reinforce what you guys view in these screencasts in class through group activities. So we will pick up right where we left off in class lecture with the cycles in nature. This is Chapter 2's lecture notes. We have, like I said, taken the Chapter 2 test. However, this will complete the Chapter 2 notes, and then we will move into the Chapter 3 notes. So we have the water cycle, carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle, and we all did our posters on these cycles in class through one of our group activities, so we should all be experts on this. But just one more review. So the water cycle. So the water cycle shows the movement of water between the atmosphere and the earth, and water moves through the processes of runoff, evaporation, transpiration, condensation, and precipitation. So we over here on the right, we have water vapor in its gaseous state as clouds. Then it comes down to the earth as precipitation, rain, and snow. Enters groundwater through infiltration. Runoff is water that doesn't infiltrate, and runoff makes its way to lakes and streams as well. Infiltration ends up as groundwater, and we use groundwater for our drinking water and shower water, and eventually groundwater makes its way to lakes and streams as well. And then in lakes and streams, we have the sun, which heats up the surface water of the lakes and streams and oceans and causes evaporation, which is the transfer of water from the abiotic parts of the environment back to the atmosphere. And then we also have transpiration, which is the transfer of water from biotic or living parts of the environment. So we sweat as humans, and that is transpiration. That is water we are releasing from our bodies and to cool us off, and the atmosphere, the sun hits the water, sweat on us, and it cools us off, and water goes back into the atmosphere as water vapor. The carbon cycle. So all life on Earth is based on carbon molecules. The carbon cycle shows its movement through the biosphere. Carbon dioxide gas in the atmosphere is used by producers, autotrophs, during photosynthesis to make energy-rich carbon molecules. So again, we have our tree, which performs photosynthesis and takes carbon dioxide and sunlight and produces sugars, which are organic carbon, and that organic carbon is eaten by plants, used by decay organisms. When plants die, we eat plants as living. We salads, and we also eat smaller organisms such as chickens, which consume plants, and other first order consumers, and we get those organic carbons after they have been consumed by the first order consumers. Then when we breathe, we release carbon dioxide after inhaling oxygen, and we also produce waste products, and eventually we die. And that is when decomposers will use the carbon and will also release it back into the atmosphere. Or eventually, like the dinosaurs, we may become fossils and fossil fuels, which we as humans are currently using and burning and releasing carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. The nitrogen cycle. So nitrogen is it's the most present gas in our atmosphere. It's 78% of our atmosphere, and in the nitrogen cycle, nitrogen is converted from gas to compounds important for life and back to gas. So nitrogen is needed to make proteins. Nitrogen gas is not usable. Lightning and certain bacteria convert nitrogen in the atmosphere into usable nitrogen. So we cannot breathe nitrogen and use it to make proteins. We have to have nitrogen fixing bacteria, which they are organisms which can breathe nitrogen and create proteins, and the nitrogen the forms of nitrogen is used by plants. Again, we consume the plants, we get our proteins, and then there are organisms that break nitrogen back down into its gaseous state and release nitrogen back into the atmosphere. So there's two bacteria on each side of that cycle. So there are bacteria that take nitrogen from the atmosphere and put it into the soil for use by plants, and then there are bacteria that release nitrogen from plants and animals back into the atmosphere. So it's important to realize that there's two types of bacteria in there. One taking it from gas for our use, and then one putting it back into the atmosphere. The phosphorus cycle. So in the phosphorus cycle, phosphorus moves between living and non-living parts of the environment. Phosphorus is another element like nitrogen and carbon that is essential for growth and development in living things. So phosphates, water, rain in our water cycle, weathers rock, and phosphates in rock run off and some of them are fixed into solutions. So this solution is water, phosphates in water, and phosphates in soil. So phosphates are used by plants. We eat the plants. Uh, Plants die. We die. There are detrivores or decomposers in the soil, which decompose us and plants and put phosphate back into an inorganic way. The phosphates go into solution, precipitated into solid phosphates, into rock, and the phosphates come back out as rock. So that is a cycle. So the phosphates never make it into a gaseous state, but it is still a cycle because the the phosphate goes from a organic component when it is used by us and plants for growth and development to an inorganic, a non-living factor when it becomes rock and mountains. So now we have, with those 3 cycles, this is about 12 minutes, so we will stop right here for our first screencast, and we will pick this up with the start of the Chapter 3 lecture notes for communities and biomes.